Welcome back. It is day 87 of our 90-day New Testament reading plan with New Life Youth. My name is Christian. Thank you for joining me today as we continue on through the book of Revelation. Today's reading is Revelation 15 and 16. So today's reading is a little bit lighter in the sense of length, but really the intensity of Revelation continues to ramp up. The further we get into Revelation, honestly, as we're reading off these pages, it starts to feel like the stuff that movies are made of, right? It's just like wild, it's chaotic. It's hard to fully even wrap our heads around as we're reading through this. Sometimes I have to read over and over to make sure I'm really understanding what is happening here, or really grasp John's vision, because here in chapter 15, we are really seeing this seventh trumpet unfold. So it sounded back in chapter 11, but we are seeing the stage being set for what feels like the main event. It's almost like even going back to this idea of the Olympic Games, right? The opening ceremonies have passed. Those are over. Everything else was a precursor. And now we're heading into like the actual games. It's like this is the final showdown that we're getting ready for. And so a pretty intense picture and really still those Olympic Games in mind with that seventh trumpet, final showdown, things like that. John, he sees these seven angels with these seven plagues, and that should immediately call to mind for us this number 7. We've talked about the number 7 is the symbol of completion. And Revelation 15:1 even reminds us that. It says, I saw in heaven another great and marvelous sign, 7 angels with 7 last plagues, last because with them God's wrath is completed. And so it's just that reminder of completion. That number 7 is that reminder of completion. This is God's final judgment, his complete and perfect justice really being poured out on an unrighteous world, on individuals who have rejected him. And so sometimes though still, I mean, if we're being honest, we still wrestle with God's wrath, right? We talked about that a little bit before, but still reading through these is like, okay, how do I really wrap my head around God's wrath for those who reject him? I think God's wrath is a hard concept for many of us that will continue to wrestle with it, because often what we want is we just want a God who only loves, and a God who never judges or who simply lets everyone into eternity. But the reality is without judgment, without that wrath, without God expressing anger ever, how could we really know God that is truly loving, or know that God is truly loving? If we think about it, a God who overlooks evil and injustice is not loving. He's apathetic. We've kind of said that before. And really, there is no love in apathy. God's wrath is actually part of his justice. It is his response to evil. And so for us today, I think these passages, even as we talk about wrath and try to wrap our heads around it, can feel unsettling at times, really feel unsettling for us. But largely that, I think, is because we haven't experienced persecution that drives us to a place where we cry out for God's vindication. Imagine for the Israelites when they were enslaved in Egypt, they were crying out for freedom, and God responded to their cry. Or these persecuted believers who are under dominion, who are suffering for their faith, they're crying out to God. For them who are walking through it, God's judgment was a reason for celebration, not for fear or anxiety. It meant that justice was coming. And I think for some of us, we've had moments where we've asked God to vindicate us or for justice. But I don't think often to the degree that we are seeing here in Revelation or in the Exodus. To help illustrate this, I'm pulling from NT Wright. He really offers a great illustration. Imagine there is a small rural village in ancient times. He says outside of Judea, but I don't know if that would be helpful for any of us who are watching this if we're not super familiar with the culture of that time. But let's say it is such a small village in these ancient times. It's so remote that even traders aren't passing through this time. There's no court system whatsoever, no local court. And there's really just injustices happening everywhere. There are widows who are they're having their purses stolen from them, and there's no one for them to appeal to or to look to or to lament to. There are families who are being evicted by greedy landlords because they think that they're going to get more money from others. Fraudsters are cheating people out of their money. All these just different injustices happening, okay? And the village has no power to bring justice on their own. But then eventually the circuit judge arrives after months of not being waiting there. He finally arrives. And what he's going to do is he's going to bring order to this chaos. He restores for those what was stolen, who had the things stolen from them. The villagers are able to breathe this sigh of relief because there is someone who is coming in and bringing justice, that's bringing order back to the chaos. And this judge isn't going to take bribes. This judge is going to be fair. He's going to listen to the prosecution and the defense. He's going to listen to both sides of the story. He'll make a fair judgment. He will bring justice and vindication to those. And this is the picture, like people would celebrate that. They look forward to when the judge comes, because the judge is bringing order back to the chaos of their situation. And really, this is the picture in Revelation, but it is on a global scale, okay? It is on a global scale. So we take that idea and we magnify and put it on a global scale, and we say this is really the picture that Revelation is giving us, that God is this righteous judge who is bringing order to the chaos. Psalm 58 verse 11 says, "Surely the righteous still are rewarded. Surely there is a God who judges the earth." This is not random wrath that God is bringing. I think some people like to think of it like that way, and that's why they have a hard time wrapping their head around God's wrath and judgment, because it feels random to them, because they don't understand who God is and his character, have a relationship with him. But God is bringing justice to restore what sin has broken in the world. And God is bringing, I just love that idea of bringing order back to the chaos that's happening around the world. That's what God is doing through these judgments. And so we see that as these bowls being poured out in chapter 16, God is unleashing his judgment on those who have taken the mark of the beast. And if you caught on to this, I hope you did, but these plagues, really, there's such a mirroring. Now, there are not 10 plagues here, but there's a mirroring to the plagues of Egypt. There were these seals and trumpets earlier in Revelation, but those only impacted a portion of the world. They were really warnings calling people to repent. But these bowls now are bringing a complete and final judgment. Like, there is no more room for repentance after these bowls. There are people who made a choice, and now they have to face their consequence. And these bowls, when we look at them, we see a full judgment. It's not just one or a third. It was a 1/3 that was affected by some of those others. This is a full judgment. And so we see like painful sores that break out on those who have the mark of the beast, that the sea turns blood. The sea turns to blood, and every living thing dies in it. Rivers and springs become blood. The sun scorches people with fire. Darkness covers the beast's kingdom. Like this judgment is for all of those who have taken the mark of the beast. And really, these are not just symbolic. Like, there's a lot of symbolism here, of course, a lot of imagery we've been talking about throughout, and we're seeing this through the recipient's lens, right? That's what we've talked about this whole time, seeing it through someone else's lens, because it can't mean to them it can't mean to us what it didn't mean to them. And so these plagues, though, they're not just symbolic, but they represent this process of God restoring order to the chaos. There's this long process that's happening, and God is restoring order to the chaos of the broken world. And this is just a part of it. These bowls being poured out is just a part of that. And so right in the middle of all of that is this moment where Jesus speaks. He makes this statement right after the sixth bowl. He says, "Behold, I come like a thief. Blessed is he who stays awake and keeps his clothes with him, so that he may not go naked and be shamefully exposed." This is a reminder for those believers who are walking this out. Stay alert, right? I think there's a clear idea, like, stay alert. The battle's won, but this is not the time for you to relax or kick your feet up and just watch the movie. This is not the time to coast in our faith. This is a call for spiritual vigilance, to be alert, to remain awake and be prepared, because the context prior to this is really fascinating, because the sixth bowl, it pours out, and this dragon, beast, and false prophet, they send out these demonic spirits symbolized as frogs to deceive these other nations, to gather them for this battle. And there's this real mirroring here of the Exodus again. So if you think back to Pharaoh's magicians using magic to deceive him into thinking that Moses was also just performing tricks. And so this call to the believers, Jesus is saying, hey, don't fall asleep. Don't be deceived. There's still a need for you to be vigilant in your faith. Don't relax and don't coast in your faith, but continue to move forward. You see that the battle is about to be won, but there is still a very real spiritual enemy here. And so you need to be alert and aware of that. And so be prepared. So we see that this process, and we see that context. And so going back to these spirits that are in the shape of frogs, they are gathering the forces of evil to one singular place, Armageddon, or actually Megiddo is what this is referring to, the Mount of Megiddo, and which was a place where a lot of battles took place. Megiddo was a very real place, a huge battlefield where many major conflicts in Israel's history took place, and a lot of other battles were fought and won and lost there. And so for John's readers, he's referring to Armageddon. This would be a symbol for a final battle between good and evil is what he's alluding to, because again, we're just trying to read and understand through the original recipient's perspective. And so they're seeing this symbol for a final battle. It's the battlefield where this final battle is going to take place. And so even God is allowing the beast and dragon and false prophet to gather their forces. And why would he do that? He would do that so that he can defeat them all at once, so that he can eliminate and strike out evil once and for all. There's a battle coming, and we're going to see that played out over the next couple of days. But the outcome is already certain. There's already a winner. Jesus wins. We know he's going to win. And we're going to see that play out. But as we reflect on these chapters a little bit, Revelation 15 and 16, a few key takeaways. I mean, God's wrath is not random. It is his righteous judgment bringing order to chaos. And so that's something we're going to continue to wrestle with and struggle with. But we have to keep that in mind, that God's wrath is not random. It does not make him an evil, mean God. But actually, it is helping us understand, even to a certain degree, man, he is a very loving God. And these plagues also, we saw them echo the Exodus, reminding us that God's power to deliver, that God has power to deliver and to judge, like he did in the past. There's a call to stay awake. We can't spiritually drift. Even though we know the battle is won, we still need to be alert. We need to be steadfast. And there's a final battle coming, but we have a hope in Jesus that he reigns victorious and he is going to see it through. But that wraps up chapters 15 and 16 of Revelation for us. And really, there is so much more depth. I know I've said this so many times, but we're just scratching the surface on what we could be talking about here. And so as always, we like to hear from you. So let us know, what are you learning? You can let us know here on YouTube in the comments or in the YouVersion Bible Plan. And of course, as always, we hope to see you tomorrow as we continue on through Revelation.